France is the other candidate for this. The only country that went into nuclear technology for reasons of power and not weapons. That is not the sorry. Yeah, good. Okay. That is not the case with the United States, the Soviet Union, certainly not the Chinese or the Pakistanis or the British. Maybe the French, definitely do things. And India also is one of the very few countries that has had a lot of public discussion and debate before they tested. After the test, in the US, you can see the think tanks putting up a lot of papers on strategy and all these things. But this sort of debate, in the US when they were making the bomb, nobody knew about it. If you mention, the Manhattan Project, it was wonderful we were getting arrested in 1943, for example, in the US. If you know about such things. So, the landmarks, 1944 is actually when India's first nuclear step is, when Homi Baba, Jahangir Baba, not the critical theory fellow, he writes a letter to Jaideep to establish what now we know as the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research. And in this 1944, there are rumors among some elite circles of this thing called a chain reaction, and nobody really knows what's going on. The idea of the bomb is theoretical, so this is nothing to do with the bomb. It's just a new field of science and technology, and if India doesn't want to be lagging behind, we need to get on board and keep abreast of this. And independence was around the corner, it was obvious. In 45, the nuclear bomb test happens, and there's a lot of buzz. In Delhi also, there are conversations, documents where Jawaharlal Nehru, 2D Prime Minister, he talks to Baba, he talks to other people in Japan, from other countries also, from the UK, and asks them what does this mean, X, Y, Z. Want to know how India will fit into this new world where this one weapon can take out a whole city. But at that point, Nehru is, he's not thinking of weapons. He's thinking we should know what this is in case we get colonized again in the future. Because India was still a colony in 1945. So that is the thing. The issue for Nehru at this point was partly, definitely, the morality of wiping out a whole city with one bomb. But finances were another thing. Nehru was very well aware, as was anybody who understood the scene. India was a poor country. They didn't have an educated infrastructure to have such high-tech programs like nuclear power. There were needs for infrastructure, education, all kinds, basically the same as we have today. So that. So TIFR was set up that way. There are a lot of internal politics in this. I'll skip all that because let's focus on the importance of nuclear issues for India, not it's not about the history of it. Apsara was the first Indian reactor that went online. It was a research reactor, which the Indians got from the British. And in '56, they finalized the deal for the Candu reactor from Canada, which was partly funded by Americans. It was the CESS reactor, which would later go on to be controversial because it actually provides plutonium for the 1974 test that India has. The Rajasthan Atomic Power Plant, those reactors were the first two reactors at least, where the deal was signed in 1960 for that. And this is a time when there's no safety regulatory environment. They didn't have the NPT and all this. These are bilateral things. There was some people said this is not a good idea, we should try and control the spread of nuclear technology, whereas others said, look, it's physics, there's no way you can get around people finding out now that we've done it. So the best thing we should do is give it to the people we like and basically sort of buy their friendship, so to speak, maybe make them dependent on us. And this doesn't change, at least in the US, till 1965. So India got these reactors more easily. And again, the attitude gets tighter and tighter. The Candu reactor had very little restrictions on it. There were few restrictions, which was that fuel or heavy water, anything provided from outside cannot be used for weapons. And India's argument has been that the plutonium produced was from Indian natural uranium, and the heavy water used during that period was Indian heavy water, is what the Indians have claimed. So in that sense, they have stuck to the spirit of to the letter of the law. The spirit might have been different because we knew what the Canadians meant, but that was not a contract. That was not in the contract. Now, why Canada? Why Canada? I mean, the US is there, and Soviets were good friends of India's, right? The reason is because the Canada reactor offered something. If you are conspiratorially minded, it offered online refueling, which meant that while the reactor is on, you can unload the fuel and reload fresh fuel rods. Which means normally in a normal reactor, you have to switch off the reactor, take out the fuel, and then put in new fuel. And this is very important because in the CANDU, what you do is you put in natural uranium, but the product is plutonium, which can be used to make bombs. So in that sense, the quote-unquote waste is actually the material for bombing, which is again another reason why the US is very hesitant to sell it in the first place. But in '56, it was not that much of an issue. And the Indians have always claimed that yes, it might be used for bomb making, but the fact is we need this for our 3-stage nuclear program. And I should say a little bit about the 3-stage nuclear program because this is basically what this is the edifice of Indian nuclear program. This is what everybody will talk about, Baba's 3-stage program. This is what our development has been built on in the nuclear area. Baba said that enriching uranium is an expensive process. We have natural uranium, which is 238, and to enrich it, we want that is, but 235 is what is many reactors use. Right? 235 is 0.7% of the total. To enrich it to that will be an expensive process, and you're wasting a lot of uranium by doing that. Another design, the CANDU design, use the natural uranium, so there's not that much, there's no enrichment to be done, and that would be better for India. Was the argument. Secondly, he said is if we have this 3-stage process, we can then use the plutonium for fast breeder reactors and eventually get around to using thorium in a 3rd stage. And thorium, India has abundance, in abundance, which means he predicted that India need not worry about energy if this thorium thing goes online for like 5, 6, 7 years. That was the scale of operations he was thinking of. Now, there's, like in anything, there's always a trade-off. The reason this reactor would use natural uranium is because it will use heavy water instead of light water, and light water is, heavy water is more expensive to make than regular water, light water. So you'll pay the price there. But that was still acceptable because of the 3-stage program, was the argument that was given. There are some people who have argued that perhaps that the financing was an issue because the Canadian reactor had better financing options compared to other light water reactors in the market. But I don't think, looking at what Baba has written, I don't think the financing was the highest thing in his mind. Of course, there was a consideration for a poor country like India, especially in 1956, but that was not the primary factor which led to this decision. Anyway, back to the 3-stage program. The first stage, you'll have these pressurized heavy water reactors which will use natural uranium and produce plutonium. Now, you take that plutonium, you take the waste, you reprocess the waste. In those days, they used Purex, but then there are other technologies like Silex, and now I think there's even laser which can be used for enrichment of uranium. All this. So similar, there are other new technologies in reprocessing also. You reprocess the fuel, and what you do is you put in a fast breeder reactor, you put the uranium-238, natural uranium, with plutonium again. What that will do is it will convert the uranium-238 to more plutonium. So you actually end up with more plutonium than put in. And once you've created enough plutonium in there, what you can do is then blanket that with thorium. Now, in the neutron exchange, what will happen is that thorium will get converted to uranium-233, which is going to be the metal oxide fuel, mixed oxide fuel for the 3rd stage. So basically, the 3rd stage would then be thorium in the uranium-233 mixed oxide fuel for the 3rd final stage, which would after that need to be refilled. The fuel refueling would only be thorium. You need not go back and put in plutonium, all these things, and ideally you are good to go. Baba, when he drew the plans, he said 6 years of water is required, but I don't think he understood Indian bureaucracy and Indian government because the re-evaluation of that plan put it to 70 years. Then there was another re-evaluation a little more recently, which is put it to 10 years, but which is, still I have questions about that figure also. I think 70 years might be what it is, especially given the problems we face today. We'll talk about that later. But that is the 3-stage program. The third, this thorium reactor, the third stage we're talking about. Right now we are in this point where we're creating the first. I think we have acquired the land and we're planning on building it. And construction is set to start in 2016. It should be ready by the end of the decade. It's the advanced heavy water reactor. I think they're setting up in Kalpakam. But the fact is, all the reports that I've read, I don't think large-scale thorium reactors are absolutely at all possible in India before 2050. So that is it. Baba's plan was that India should produce 10 gigawatts of nuclear power for the first stage. Until then, you keep having the first stage heavy water reactors.
Gigawatts.
Yeah. He did not understand Indian.
In 1940s, 50s.
That is his plan, right? And he didn't plan this for for like 1 or 2 years. He said, okay, in 6 years we should get here. But so anyway, the point was
we get 700 megawatts from Kaiga. 700.
The second stage, we have to keep building the fast breeder reactors until we hit 50 gigawatts. And the third stage basically will kick in at that point. And at that point, we're good to go. Yeah, we're lagging a little bit, I think. Just a little bit. So, I mean, here, now what has happened is, now the news is that the advanced heavy water reactor, people are questioning the technology. Not that it doesn't work, there are many good features in it, but they're saying, is there any way of directly injecting thorium into the process? So you have these things like the liquid fluoride thing, the lifters they call it, LFTR, where you can start off with thorium itself. But anyway, we'll get to that in the next thing. Let me also continue this module. What changes a lot of these weapons programs and all these things is that in 1974 India tests. Energy. The energy situation is changed hugely by the test with the sanctions. And sanctions basically shut down a whole bunch of experiments, they shut down a whole bunch of labs. It's very difficult to collaborate and anything related. I've seen documents in the US archives where people wanted to do experiments on irradiating cotton to see something, and that went to the next level, to the higher up. Can we allow this or not? Irradiating cotton, nothing to do with weapons. But that is how strict they were. Probably because they were quite upset with the 74 test. But the other thing is that the heavy water scenario, which has always plagued India, improved only in the mid-90s. And in the mid-90s, the Indians managed to actually export a little heavy water to South Korea. But since then, again, there have been problems, and again now, I think India is producing enough for its own needs, but not enough to export. Although that is not what that's not what DARC will tell you. They say we are fine and we are good to go. We just need the sanctions from the government to expand our facilities. Now that is a rough idea of how the energy sector has evolved, the nuclear energy, the basic ideas.